Well, I have Tony here, who's an ex-police officer in the UK, and he has a special interest with PTSD because he also suffers a bit of PTSD. And so I organized this because they were really interested. I was talking about you guys, your experience with well, basically your clinic, and with Army veterans who were benefiting from the PSIO, and they also had PTSD. Maybe, Tony, you can give a little introduction of yourself.
Metropolitan Police Officer for 18 years. During that period, obviously sights, sounds, riots, all sorts of things that came up. Alongside, in 2007, I had a traumatic head injury with a subarachnoid hemorrhage. That sort of added to things, and I was a different person when I came round from 2 weeks, like in a coma side of things, and sort of trying to find my feet after that. I couldn't. And then going back to work with no aftercare, I then saw dead bodies and all sorts that was come back, and it just a bit of a haunting. But so that sort of, and it took about 10 years for that to creep in. Suicidal ideations, the whole lot. It was a mess. But obviously, I'm now retired from that side of things after a great battle. But it's now, I found the PSIO, found Kundalini activation process, which is, there's all sorts of different approaches holistic wise. The medication side of things, oh my God, stay away from that. That was just hell on earth. I have never wanted to climb the walls before.
Right.
I got to 25 stone. I was just a beast. The hormone levels were all over the place. It was just horrendous. But to tell you the truth, going like that with the medication, PSIO, and all the other approaches which people have gone, oh, you don't want to do that because that's, you know, that's namby-pamby, it's rubbish, has actually just pulled everything together. So yeah, basically that's where I am now. I feel fantastic. Couldn't be any better, but obviously I want to make sure I'm in a world now with, if I go with this approach to help others, I've got a lot of people in the NHS and things like that that are going, no, that's wrong, that's incorrect. But however, it's helped me. So it's obviously knowing where that approach is the best way, on how's the best way to go about it, really.
So, Nicholas, thank you both for sharing. We see so many patients with similar histories, and I think probably the 25 minutes that we have is not going to be enough to really train you in a way that would be really highly effective for you. But I think if we can at least get you started and learn the process that we've learned. We see a lot of Navy SEALs in our region. We see a lot of pilots in our region. So we have all military sides. So we don't just see Army, we Army, Navy, Marines. So it's really important to recognize that depending on where the PTSD comes from and what type of military job that the person has really is the indicator of where you would go. And there's always a safe zone to start, right? One of the things I think maybe, Tony, that you'll be able to express is that when you're in the military, you are basically, you know not to tell anybody your medical history, you know not to complain, you know to hold it all in, you don't want it anywhere in your records, you don't want to have any possibility for discharge. And so you have to recognize that people that are still in the military or even coming in, they're in that mindset. They've always been told, don't be a sissy, push through whatever your symptoms are. And when you're using a technique or any kind of alternative medicine that is highly effective, which the CO glasses are incredibly effective, you have to recognize that you might not be told the truth and you could do more harm than good if you don't start out slowly. And this, again, depending on the job and depending on the type of PTSD. So if you're talking about visual shocks versus audio shocks, they affect different parts of the brain. If you have a bomb go off in front of you, it's going to impact the occipital lobe. versus if you have a bomb go off behind you, it's going to impact the frontal lobe. And versus the side of you, it's going to impact the temporal lobe on the opposite side of the brain. And so having some better understanding allows you to know what programs are going to be most effective for a person and how cautious you need to be. And also how early in a person's life they had trauma.
Yeah.
So if a person, their first experience with PTSD was military, that's very different than someone who has childhood abuse or like abandonment issues below 5 years old or lack of nurturing. So if you just slow everything completely down and you recognize that these are the people that are going to either have a reaction to the CO glasses or they're going to hate the CO glasses.
Yeah.
And the more you hate it, the more you need it. Then if you go slow and steady, so instead of putting them in the glasses and expecting them to shift and trying to push them to shift quickly, you do a total backup and you're going to go very, very, very slowly into integration of treatment.
Because if you slow their brain down too fast, they're going to have an anxiety attack or a panic attack.
Basically, it sounds similar to what happened with me. It was all rush, and I just, whoa, what the hell's going on? Basically, I took a big step back and I did EFT and matrix re-imprinting. When I did that, all the tapping, it took me back to an event that happened 18 months of age, where there was a row between my mum and dad. That was traumatic. They healed that sort of side of things and altered the perception of that, and a lot of things opened up and changed. So it's obviously, I possibly carried this thing that happened from 18 months to 45 years of age, and everything else is just compiled on top of it. But it was it's sort of mystical that something that far back can affect you this far ahead.
One of the things that we recognize with our patients is, so our SEAL team and our pilots, these are people who don't sleep and that are on high alert 24 hours a day. And if you put them in a state of relaxation, of deep relaxation, it scares them to death because they know if they're in that state of relaxation, they could be killed.
Yeah.
And so creating a really safe environment is also really critical. And giving them the ability to change what they're doing within the room. And I'll have Amanda go into more of this with you, on how we start integrating. But what you need to understand is if you place the CO glasses on somebody and you don't educate the person ahead of time, and they have a bad experience the first time, they will never get back in them again.
Right.
So if you start super slow and you ask all the right questions and the person is honest with you, and you say, we're going to do 3 to 4 sessions before we decide if you like the glasses. Okay? So one of the things that you need to understand is the majority of people that go into military type jobs or police type jobs or firefighters, their dominant neurotransmitter in their brain is dopamine. And they need excitement. So if you put them in the glasses where the light stays stable and they're photosensitive, on the, you put them in a light which doesn't change and doesn't flicker, they're going to get bored out of their mind and they're not going to want to do it because they want the level 5s, okay, on the CO glasses. But the level 5s on the CO glasses are most dangerous for them if they don't have the other neurotransmitters below it to calm them, like GABA. And so it's really critical that you say to them, you may not like these at all the first couple of treatments, because what we're going to do is just let your brain accommodate in and recognize that it can make a shift. And we're not going to shift you too quickly. We're going to do baby steps to shift you in. And if they have an okay experience, but it's not life-changing the first 2 sessions, they'll still come for the 3rd session to hit that life-changing experience. But all the patients that we started out with early on, that we put them in flickering lights and a level 3 or a level 4, they all had these reactions where either they couldn't stop crying for weeks, or they got so relaxed that they said, there's no way I'm ever doing that again because I could be killed.
If you don't mind me just saying, so when Andra talks about level 3, level 4, level 5, it's the type of light stimulation. So when it's 1, it doesn't flicker. When it's 5, it flickers a lot.
So do you want to talk about how we bring a patient in? Because this way, if we get behind, can you go a little bit over time? Because I'll have patients waiting, but we'll kind of stagger back and forth because depending also on the other techniques that you use, if you're a practitioner, we use a lot of techniques to determine where to start a patient.
Right.
But if you don't have that in your background, then it's much smarter to just start slow like we tell you to do and prepare the patient.
So typically when somebody comes in, we have a printout of a piece of paper that we go through. That's a list of questions that we ask patients. So we ask them if they have any sensitivity to bright or flashing lights, because some people will tell you that they can't be in flashing lights. They don't like bright lights. They shy away from it. And those are really helpful to know. We ask if they have any vertigo or dizziness, because if they do, they're not going to be able to do the flickering lights without having symptoms. We ask if they get car sick or motion sick, because if so, again, the flickering lights can create a symptom. We ask if they feel nauseous, lightheaded, anxious, in visually overstimulating areas. So even in being in big box stores or like grocery stores or places that are very crowded.
Do you call them big box stores in the UK? Like Costco, BJ? Do you have those type of stores?
Yeah.
Or like a Target?
We've got Costco,
Okay.
Yeah.
Have they had a concussion or a serious head trauma? We ask if they are sound sensitive and light sensitive. And we ask if they have issues on takeoff or landing on a plane. So those are all indications for us that if they say yes to one or any of those questions, it's better to start with the photosensitive programs, the ones that have no flickering lights, to kind of ease in. And we've had some patients that we can't even do the glasses and the lights at the same time. So if they are very sound sensitive, we would start with just the lights on for a period of time, get them used to that. And as long as they did well that first treatment, the next treatment, we could either combine them or do just the sound and see how they did, and then combine them on the third treatment. So it's nice with the PSIO glasses that you can break it down into the steps, because they're more relaxed if they have a little bit more control in the beginning. So if there's somebody that is sound sensitive, they're going to do better when they can hear anything going on around them. And just the glasses are on. They need to be in a room by themselves. Doing it at a big place where there's other sound going around, they won't relax.
And if somebody can walk behind them, and we've seen this when we've been at our conferences, Nicholas, where if somebody could get behind them, it would startle them in the middle, or if there's too much information going around. So even when we think that we can attempt to do light and sound together, we always tell a patient, if you feel anxious while the treatment's running, and it's the voices that make you anxious, leave the glasses on and take the headset off. But don't interrupt the program, and see if you can get calmness within that. If you find that the light is bothering you, then take the glasses off, but leave the headphones on.
And since we started doing with that, we haven't really had anybody not be able to make it through a treatment okay. It's when you're trying to force them into both the headsets and the glasses that they can become overwhelmed.
It's also really critically important that when you prep a person for the therapy, the way I do it is I say, pretend you're in a crowded restaurant and you're by yourself. When you do that, you become hypersensitive to the environment, and you can hear all the people's conversations going on around you, and you're more visually aware of what's going on. So we tell people, keep your eyes closed the first treatment. It's still going to work. It's going to go through your visual field, even if it's in a morning program or not. We always start with evening programs with patients, not morning programs. Because if you start with a morning program and they're blue light sensitive, you're going to have a problem. All the photosensitive programs are red light, so that's not usually an issue. But we tell them, pretend you don't care anything that's going on in your environment. You just let the noise go on around you. You don't have to hear what a person's saying. So if you put the glasses on and you put the headphones on and you can just completely let yourself go and not pay attention. So don't worry about what they're saying. There's nothing subliminal in there. Don't try to pay attention to the story. Just let your brain go. They're always able to make it through.
Mm-hmm.
We also tell them, you know what, it's okay if you're so vigilant that you can't do that the first time.
Yeah.
So your brain will get what it needs to hear, but the more intensity you use to try to follow the story, the harder it is for you to be able to relax and get the benefit from the glasses. And when we started telling people that, they did a much better job. And the people who weren't able to let go, they said, I just couldn't pay attention to what you said. I just had to listen the whole way through. But once they've done it the first time, the second time, they're able to let it go.
Yeah.
So they're able to not listen.
And so typically after we've had them do that stages and we're onto both the glasses and the lights, if they've responded well to the red light program that's not flickering and they don't have symptoms of being photosensitive, we will then switch to a level 3 program.
Which starts some of the flickering.
So the ones we use the most in that are letting go, joy of life, and be happy.
Those are the only 3 programs that we ever use with a patient when we're starting. Do you want to go through those and why we use those?
So we typically ask patients when we're deciding between the 3, if we're doing it just on kind of patient feedback or client feedback, is we've found best results if somebody is more anxious, they're going to do better with letting go. If they're more depressed, they're going to do better with joy of life.
Right.
And be happy is not photosensitive.
No. So that one's kind of if we know that they're not photosensitive and they have tried joy of life and haven't responded as well as they'd like, then be happy is kind of our second tier of that. We use joy of life and letting go the most out of all the programs. Now, if somebody is mixed, like they have anxiety and depression symptoms, they're going to do better with joy of life. Because if you put them in letting go and they have depression, they will cry.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
It was a lot of trial and error on that side. We had quite a few people crying on us, and we finally figured out that they have those symptoms. Don't do letting go to start with.
People who have insomnia, people who have way too many thoughts in their head, and people who can't relax. I'd love it if you could take a few minutes to explain depression and anxiety mixed and how each one can get overridden by the other and why joy of life works better.
Yeah. So in the brain, anxiety and depression are very much combined together. So when your brain is overgoing and running and running and running for too long, the brain can't sustain that for a long period of time. What happens is the brain starts to shut things down. It starts to downregulate, it starts shutting things down, so the depression starts to come down. So when you're in that mix of the anxiety starting to come down, the depression starting to come up, you're going to be in that mixed period. Now, stay in that mixed period, and they slightly travel to one side and they slightly travel to the other, or you have people that completely swing. They go from severe anxiety back down to severe depression and back and forth. And if you are doing the letting go with somebody and they're swinging, you have to be careful that you don't swing them too far the other direction if there's somebody that goes back and forth. Yeah. Versus the joy of life seems to keep them a little bit better in that center and not so much of a swing.
So Amanda, you know, say a person loves the Joy of Life program, but it gets to the end and they say to us, if it was just 5 minutes longer, if it was just, I was just right on the verge of getting to that space and I just couldn't make it. What do you do now?
Stress management. That program is one of my favorites. It's longer than letting go, but it's a very similar in a lot of aspects. But it's the longest, and it has those double voices that the letting go doesn't have, the double stories. So it allows people, as they've gotten used to relaxing, get to a deeper state because they're in it longer.
What about the patient says, "Oh, well, I've done this one 3 times. I want to move on to the next program."
We use the same program for at least 30 days. Because the brain has to get into that pattern of actually getting into a deeper state of relaxation, and the longer they use it, the better they're going to respond to it.
So we call Joy of Life and Letting Go and Be Happy our foundational programs. And so we say you would never build a house without building a foundation. And if you want the other programs to lock in, you need to build your foundation. The other thing we find is so many people who have like issues with overeating or smoking or sleep, we don't need to use the programs for those things. They resolve just with the baseline programs, those foundational programs.
So you have an in-house protocol when your patients come in, and then often you rent them out because you need to respect those 30 days. Do you mind explaining a little bit about this?
Sure, no problem. The nice thing about the CO is that we can program them exactly with what we want on them for a patient. So when we're renting them, we program them with what's safe for them. We usually have just the foundational programs on there and instructions on how to run them. They come in, we show them how to turn them on, how to play a program. And we go through instructions. You're going to try this, and you're going to do it 1 time a day, and you're going to respond back. And they call us usually 3 days in and tell me how they've done. And then based on that, we go kind of further into what the best program is and finding their program that works for them. Once they've found that program, we recommend they use that program every day for 30 days.
Okay.
But typically with rentals,
Do you want us to talk about the finances of the rentals and?
No, not at first. Really, why you do the rentals? Because there's a reason.
We have probably half of the patients that come in after 2 sessions in office, because we tell them really you need to see which works better for you, joy of life or letting go. But the majority of the time we get the program right the first time because we've asked them all these other questions, and they immediately say, okay, we're just going to buy the glasses.
Okay.
And then there's another group that sort of have to convince their spouses and that kind of thing. And so
we have a lot of large families as well in our practice.
Now we only put on the glasses. It seems like it is a little bit more work. Now, if you have multiple glasses that you can rent, it makes it nice because then you only have the things on those glasses so they're ready for the rentals. The glasses we use in the office have a lot more programs on them. You know, they're fully loaded. But what we found with patients is when you say to them, don't run this program, all they hear is run this program. And you tell them, do not put on flashing lights, they only hear put on flashing lights. And those people that have that need for speed, they will put on the program you tell them not to. And then all of our patients always call us, you are so right, we should not have done that, that was really stupid of us, we suffered for 24 hours after. But we just decided it wasn't worth giving them that option and having a bad experience. We really don't want people to have bad experiences, so now we just have bare minimum on the glasses that are rented.
And so like Tony, I was explaining this during one of our trainings, where the protocol for audioceuticals is really to create this anchorage. And this is only the 30 days that helps to create this anchorage. There's even studies proving that if you cut it at the 21st day or 25th day, you need to restart the whole process again. So it's really important those 30 days.
I'm going to tell you, Nicholas, I don't really find that that's the case if people are working, they're doing self-work in other ways. You know, we know 21 days to a habit. We know that. That you don't bring your old habits back. If you put a person in the CO glasses and after 7 days, they're sleeping 8 hours a night, that means they're going to have more energy during the day to exercise. That means that they're going to go out and do things socially that bring joy to their heart. That means that they're going to make better choices when they're eating. So we find that they turn everything around. And the more other things a person's doing, the quicker it locks in. Now, the biggest thing is, what does their environment look like? If you're doing the CO glasses for 21 days, even 30 days, and you're sending a person back into war, they're going to have to do them a lot to keep that up because their nervous system keeps trying to get shifted. Or if they're in an abusive marriage, or if they're having a lot of financial stress. Most of our patients after the 30 days, they will either just drop down to once a week or twice a week or twice a month. And depending on all the other things that they're doing to support their lifestyle, that's typically the better indicator of how long they're going to need them, how often they're going to need them.
Quite a lot of it. I've done a lot of. I got to a certain level, and then I'll do a little bit more experimentation for myself. When I got to a certain level, when I was getting to the gym and stuff like that, there was a little bit more, how much can I push myself to a degree to find out whether I get more relaxation out of more of this. It's like I mentioned the Kundalini activation process that I've been doing. That has just been, whoa, completely, totally, I can't even explain. But I tried it with the last fortnight with the glasses on.
And it was amazing, right?
All I can say is I have never, ever been no body, no person, no time, no place. And it was just, because I'm big following Mr. Dispenza, following him and a lot of his stuff with the pineal gland and stuff, things like that. And that, alongside the glasses and the whole mindset, environment, Bruce Lipton, all that sort of side of things, it seems to be that is the way to not clear PTSD, but maintain it a hell of a lot better. You still get the odd triggers, but you react differently to the triggers.
So I'll just add a couple of things on that, Tony. One is when a patient comes in, it's really important to let them know, like, if they never are able to use the flickering lights, if they're never able to get out of the photosensitive programs, that's totally okay. They're not doing anything wrong. That's what their brain needs, and that's as effective, if not more effective, than the flickering lights in certain patients, because they will feel like they haven't done something right, or they need to change something in order to manage. So it's really important to encourage them and let them know that it's okay that they're in that, and that is the right program for them. The second thing to know is when you use additional energy medicine techniques with a patient and they're responding to those energy medicine techniques, when you combine them together, we just say it's like the angels sing. You know, the body just knows how to respond, and you're getting to like a whole nother level in your consciousness and your healing that you could have done with one technique alone. So we, in our office, we do individual techniques, make sure a person is doing fine with those techniques alone. And then when we know they're responding positively to each technique, then that's when we combine them together. And we could have 3 or 4 different techniques. We will do pulsed electromagnetic fields along with microcurrent therapy, along with CO glasses at the same time. But that's a lot of trial and error on our part to know what things are amazing. So if you're using any other things that directly impact the brain, you wouldn't use them at the same time. You can use them consecutively, but you don't want to put them on the body at the same time, because you may be forcing the brain to do 2 opposite things at once without realizing it. But stacking techniques, so running them consecutively, and if they're working together, running them concurrently, can make huge changes for patients.